2024 presidential debate discussion has begun. You have come to the right place. If you can make it through this video, you'll be the smartest person walking into your office, into your job site, in your classroom, whatever it is. I'm going to prepare you to have fun in those discussions or to make your coworkers your bitch. If you thought Trump was going to walk into this debate and absolutely decimate Kamala, you are unfortunately sorely mistaken. She held her own, and this debate was much closer than anyone would have guessed. I have cut through the noise so you don't have to watch this. This was honestly a tough thing to watch. It was rough, but I'm going to hook you up. Let's dig in. I'm going to hit you with some of the key points on the major topics so you know what to talk about and how to discuss it, whether you love Trump and you want to get some talking points on his end, or whether you love Kamala and you want to get some talking points on her end. I'm going to set you up so you're ready to go. We're going to start here by talking about one of the most important topics today. We're going to talk about the economy. Starting with the economy, the theme was the economy was better before when Trump was president. So what happened? And so they're going to talk a little bit about Kamala hitting up some of her ideas, which is good, and then talk about Trump's rich tax cuts and Trump's tariffs. And Trump's going to kind of hit back with, hey, tariffs have been here. You didn't get rid of them. Let's dig into a couple of examples. Before Kamala also talked about, again, her plan for aspirations, her plan for the middle class and helping people move up and grow. I think part of that is a good idea in a sense, but sometimes it lacks some substance. So, good idea, but I don't know if I love it.
I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000. My passion, one of them, is small business. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit.
In my opinion, started out the gate pretty strong. So talking about the $6,000 credit, talking about the $50,000 credit for small businesses. Those are good things to really dig into and show. Here are some actual facts. Here are some facts. Here are some plans for what I'm going to do if I'm president. This is really the kind of stuff that you're looking for, especially if you're in debates with your friends. Here's something that you can pull out and say, here's what my candidate supports. Also hitting on the idea that Trump's tax cuts benefit the wealthy. And so this one's a little bit of a double-edged sword. It really depends on how you look at it. But it does support the wealthy, and it has shown that there are, not only from wealthy people, but also businesses get a huge tax cut, but it also really supported the middle class, and it helped vitalize jobs. So it isn't as if it's just for the wealthy, but you can absolutely make the case that the wealthy benefit from it. And one thing to note too, you can see both on both of them. I don't know what happened, but it looks like both of them were just in a boxing match. To be honest, Trump's eyes look like they're puffed up and beat up, and Kamala seems extremely nervous. You can hear her lip smacking. All that said, Kamala, keep watching. She opens up later in the debate, as does Trump to some degree. So now moving on to Trump, he's going to call out, hey, you want to talk about my tax cuts? You want to talk about how you think I'm bad for the economy? But I put these tariffs in. I got money back from that, and yet they're still here. So if you're really opposed to my tariffs, why didn't you get rid of them?
We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back. I took in billions and billions of dollars from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation.
I'll save you the boring and awful rest of this that they dive into. Trump gets a bit more into how bad the inflation has been the past few years, which is true, as well as we're not even at this topic yet, but he's already getting into the border. He also gets into the Springfield, Ohio situation where I think people are eating pets. I'll be honest, I'm not as familiar with this right now. It may or may not be true, but right now, a little wrong place, wrong time. in my opinion, this is not the place to bring that up, especially this early in the story. On top of that, we have Kamala talking about Project 2025, Trump denying it. So a lot of back and forth stuff that's not really that interesting and not really giving you the facts about who you want to vote for if you're in the middle, or kind of have some of those discussion points. To be honest, so looking at the way this first topic plays out, I have to give it to Kamala. I really didn't think, especially economy, I didn't think this was the way that it was going to go. But Kamala was a little more concise, a little more controlled. And Trump, on the other hand, was kind of let loose and dug into some of the more crazy topics that I didn't see from him in the Biden debate. So in this case, first topic, I feel like Kamala took it. All right, stick around. Now we have the next big dog topic, immigration. Here, I think we see early on Kamala start to flounder. Kamala start to fail a bit. Hitting back those talking points, if you've watched anything recently, or if you haven't, I can fill you in. She talks about how she's the only one who has prosecuted transnational criminals. She said this a bunch of times in the interview with Dana Bash, and some of the few times where she's come out and actually talked to people. This is a constant thing. So to bring it back to this debate, kind of annoying, to be honest, unneeded. And then talked about the other topic that she continues to bring up, that there was an immigration bill that apparently Trump called his friends in Congress and told them to tank. To be honest, I think get the job done. If you really think you have a great bill, get the job done. Don't continue to blame Trump for things that were maybe your failings. So I feel like she floundered here a little bit. Where she has a little more success, and I'll show you some examples. She talks about how she has 200 people from the Republicans on her side. In my opinion, there's a lot of talk of Republicans in the past being weak and not really with the current times. So to see old Republicans from maybe the Bush era, where a lot of Republicans today hate, not really a positive, but I think it's the right point. This is definitely the kinds of things that she needs to hit on. We also saw Kamala talk about Trump's legal issues. So as a Trump fan, you could take the stance of these are pun intended, trumped up issues and kind of bullshit. But if you're on the side of Kamala, it's true. I mean, he's gone to court. In one case, he's been prosecuted. So on the Trump side, though, he's talking through how, again, immigration is such a huge issue. You have, in his opinion, people coming in and taking black people and Mexican jobs. I understand what he's trying to say. I'm not the biggest person to come out and call racism, but if you're out there thinking this is a racist comment, I can understand that. It's kind of a shitty comment. He could approach that a much better way. It really shouldn't be about race. I think he's looking at it like, hey, I'm here and I'm trying to help African American and Mexican people, but not realizing that it's coming off a little bit as these jobs are not great jobs, and that's why these races have it. And I don't think that's what he's intending, but for some, that's how it can come off. On the positive side for Trump, he is calling out, look, these cases that I'm being tried on, this is political weaponization. And I think there is some truth to that. I think it's unfortunate this is the situation that we're in today. But I do think it is. I do think political candidates are using those tools that they have to come after their opponents. Not at all saying that Trump wouldn't do the same thing, but just calling out that plenty of these cases seem a little ridiculous, seem like ways to just prevent Trump from getting in office. But I'll give you some examples. I'll pull up some video here for you.
And I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term.
Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York.
On this one, I'm gonna go Trump here. So a little bit fair, a little bit not fair. Again, not his best performance from a debate perspective, but it's really hard to win the fact that we've seen a lot of illegal crossings at the border. Even if you want to look at Kamala, not technically the borders are, but still vice president in office, where we've seen a lot of this happen, and we've seen a lot of news articles around crime from people crossing the border. Not to say that everyone who crosses the border is bad. A good majority of them are probably great people. But a lot of countries are for having some kind of border and having some kind of rules around that. And even Kamala is saying that she's for that as well. So this one goes Trump for me. So we're kind of 1-1 at this point. Okay, let's change gears here a little bit. Let's talk about fracking, and let's talk about where Kamala has changed positions. And this is a very interesting one. And if you've been listening to some of my videos, you're going to see a theme come up that I'd mentioned in one of the prior ones. So the moderator talks about, you ran for president in 2020. For those that may not be aware, she ran in the primary. She was one of the presidential candidates. And, so this is before Biden became the nominee. So before that, she was for a ban on fracking. She wanted mandatory government buybacks of assault weapons. Now she's saying she does not support those things. She wanted to decriminalize border crossings. Again, changed her mind on that. So why have all your positions changed is essentially the question that was asked. And so her response coming back, bingo, was the thing I kept talking about.
So my values have not changed.
And there it is. My values have not changed. I think this is going to continue to be a theme. This is a way that she can, in my opinion, flip-flop a little bit. She can take something that she stood for in the past, and now she can come back and say, well, I have a different stance on it now, but my values have not changed. And she's not 100% wrong, but I do feel like this is a little bit of a cop-out.
I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. We have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil.
I think at times liberals can go a little bit too far into the renewable energy sources. I'm not saying that I'm against that necessarily, but it has to be reasonable. I personally wish that we would get back into nuclear. I know that can be scary for some, but realistically, it's been a very safe energy source. Having said that, Kamala talking about reducing our dependence on foreign oil, I do like that. I think that's a great way to approach it. And while she completely dodged the change in policy, her moving towards different sources of energy, a good response. All that said, as has been the case of the debate so far, things degraded from there. So Trump talking about how she's for defunding the police, how she raised money for criminals in Minnesota. That may or may not be true. But kind of getting off the rails again a little bit. On the Kamala side, she talked about, again, like she has in her prior discussion with Dana Bash, I'm a middle-class kid. I didn't get $400 million. I understand what's better for you, the regular people. I like the sentiment. I understand what she's going for. I wish we were talking a little bit more about policy and less about touchy-feely kind of stuff. But that said, here's another one where I think we have to give it to Kamala, and I'm surprised about that. Especially the fracking issue. This is one where it should have been hands down a Trump win. And what we're finding instead is Kamala's spinning enough to make sense for it to work. Now we move on to international topics. Here's one that has actually been pretty popular on my channel, growing here, trying to get bigger. But the Israel-Hamas conflict, a big piece here. So big question overall is, what do we do? How do we end this? How do we come to a deal? And so Kamala talks a bit about Israel having the right to defend themselves, but she wants a ceasefire and a two-state solution, while kind of circling back to giving Israel the ability to protect them, to defend themselves. And for me personally, we'll see how this plays out, but I do feel that a two-state solution will be very challenging. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but to some degree, if you think about maybe the person that you hate the most, and imagine if you were put in a room with that person and said, you know what, both of you, we're going to put both of you in this office, and you guys, let's just be together. We're going to be fine. How would you feel about that? So again, I'm not saying that's a bad solution. I'm just saying I can see the challenges with that. On the flip side, what's the other solution? One entity ends the other entity. It's just not a lot of great options at all. But anyway, Kamala pushing that piece. And then Trump, I think this is where Trump is becoming super strong. Not, again, great in the debate here, but his message is really important. So we'll run some clips on this.
We must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself.
If I were president, it would have never started. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had.
So this is true. This is an area where Trump doesn't get as much credit for the work that he's done as he should. A lot of people want to paint him as a dictator. A lot of people want to paint him almost sometimes as a warmonger, when he's been the opposite of that a little bit. Again, Trump, art of the deal, whether you like it or you think of It's Always Sunny and how dumb it is. I mean, I don't really get it either way. But the fact that one of his strengths is negotiation. One of his strengths tonight was not really debate, but one of his strengths is negotiation, and the fact that he kept these countries at bay. He had sanctions on Iran. If you look it up, it's what he had done. And so that limits Iran's ability to support Hamas. And so it limits Hamas's ability to attack Israel. So that's really where he's coming back to. It would have never happened. And he's not entirely wrong there. So with that said, this is one where Kamala is looking more poised. She's coming to the table much better fashion than I would have expected. When I saw the Dana Bash interview, I really thought she was going to come here and she was going to be complete garbage. I thought she was going to be absolute trash. And instead, we're seeing her composed. Having said that, I do think on topic alone, on what we're actually specifically talking about alone, I have to give this one to Trump. Now we take a small plane ride to the Ukraine. So a question was asked, how will you end the war in Ukraine? And Trump talks a lot about the relationship that he has had with Zelensky and with Putin. And generally speaking, his idea is he would talk to each one and then bring them together. But then he kind of dived into a bit, this could be World War III. I know with a lot of stuff that's going on in the world, that's not a completely foreign idea, but he got a little crazy on that one. Kamala, on the other end, talked about how she helped bring 50 countries together to support Ukraine and provided them with tanks and weapons and has allowed them to still be independent. Then pushed the issue a little bit about how if Trump were in office, Putin would order to be in Kiev, and he would be walking all over Ukraine. This one I struggle a bit with. We're kind of back to the same thing as with Israel. Trump puts things in place and through negotiation prevents some of this stuff from happening. And you may or not believe that some of that you have to look up on your own and make your own judgment call. I can see some cases for both. I can see some cases on Kamala's side, all the work that they went in to get the support. I can also see, again, on Trump's side, the idea that Kamala was sent in to bring peace, to prevent a war from happening, and a few days later, Putin invades Ukraine. So on top of that, the other big thing for me, and Trump will call this out, is Putin did not want to destroy the infrastructure that he has going through Ukraine to get his fuel out of Russia. And so he was working on the Nord Stream 2. Again, look this up if you haven't heard of this, Nord Stream 2. He was building that, and when Trump was in office, he blocked it. He said, no way, you're not going to finish the Nord Stream 2. He's going to put sanctions on Germany. He's going to put sanctions on other countries that are helping put this thing in place, and it stopped. So the Nord Stream 2 had effectively been stopped, preventing Putin from getting his fuel out any other way but through Ukraine. And so at that time, Putin had not invaded Ukraine. Biden comes into office, and this isn't rhetoric, this isn't personal opinion, these are facts. You can go and look, you can find the articles. Biden allowed the Nord Stream 2 to continue to move forward. And shortly after it was built, Putin invades Ukraine. So good points there. We'll roll some footage on this.
I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. We understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence.
They ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that, but he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany.
Let's round out this debate with the topic of abortion. So here we have Trump talking about a question kind of coming to him about, you've said you're the most pro-life president ever, but then you say you support women, a little bit of flip-flopping, what does that mean? And so Trump jumps into some rhetoric here, talking a bit about Kamala's philosophy and an extremely late term or even post-abortion, post-birth abortion, which I'm not sure exactly where that's coming from. I do think there's been talk on some liberal sides about this happening pretty late, which is a little scary, but I don't know where Trump's getting that specifically on the post-birth, but either way, talking through that and digging back into the Roe v. Wade, so pushing that issue again of he's brought it back to the states so that everybody the states can choose for themselves. He also did, the one where we did pretty well is he talked about how he's for IVF, and that's something that the liberals have really hammered on with Trump. But then when we flip to Kamala, she talks about, kind of incorrect, but she talks about how Trump is is forcing women to have these children after horrific things have happened to them. And he said that he's for the exceptions. Where Trump has failed here, though, is he's asked numerous times a very simple question, a very simple effing question, in my opinion. If it's presented to you to ban all abortions, will you veto it? And he dodges the question, completely dodges the question. I feel like this would have been a very easy win for him to just say, yes, I'll veto it. From what I understand, J.D. Vance even said that their administration would veto it. So I think Trump's playing a careful game here of not wanting to piss off the base, but I think he needs to be, at some point you have to answer the effing question. Kamala, on the other hand, she dodged a little bit. So they asked, would you want any restrictions? And I think kind of pushing the issue of how late in term would you be for abortion? And she defaults back to supporting Roe v. Wade, not really answering that question either. But she does put forth some emotional response to what Trump's doing. And I think I think that helped sell her a bit on some of these discussions. So let's roll some footage here.
In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month.
You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot? She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans.
So who won this topic? I feel like Trump lost it right there. Very simple answer. Will you veto a ban on abortions? And again, he completely dodges the question. I'm not saying he should or shouldn't ban it. For everybody listening here, that's really up to you to decide. I'm not taking a stance on that one way or the other. My point, though, is Trump dodged the question completely. And Kamala coming out with a very heartfelt message in the beginning. Again, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with the message, but her ability to express that emotion and then Trump's inability to answer what, in my mind, is an extremely simple yes or no question. Just answer the G-damn question. He won't do it. And so for that, I have to say that you're probably going to be upset at this as a bit of a cop-out here, but it goes to Kamala. And with that, who wins the overall debate? You know, on the topics that we covered here, and certainly wasn't all the topics, but I covered the key topics, it's 3-3, which is kind of a tie in a sense. But if I were to say who really won the debate overall, I know it's going to sound like I'm being biased towards Trump, and I wanted Trump to win, but I more than anything, I really came into this debate expecting Trump to absolutely wipe the floor with Kamala. That's really what I thought. What we saw in the past, Kamala didn't show me anything to say that she had a snowball's chance in hell of going up against Trump. And she did it. She somehow did it. She went up against Trump and kind of deflected some of the, I should say maybe in a better sense, she kind of let Trump hang himself. And maybe that was part of ABC as well. You know, there's a lot of talk about how the muted mics helped Trump. And I kind of thought that maybe went a little bit extreme, but here, while they technically had muted mics, ABC allowed Trump to speak almost every time that he wanted to speak. So when Kamala finished and they wanted to go on to a new topic, and Trump said, no, I want to speak to that. I want to speak to that. They let him speak. And, you know, in a strange turn of events, I think that was to his detriment. Letting him talk more is where he lost it a lot in this debate. So while I think on the topics we covered here, it was 3-3. If I had to pick a winner, I'd have to say it was Kamala. She surprisingly came out and she was able to be more dynamic than she has in the past. I wouldn't say incredibly dynamic. She wasn't, but more dynamic in the past. When you go to the Dana Bash interview, which I thought was absolutely terrible, and I thought not only was she awful, it seemed very scripted and planned and just terrible. To go from that to being able to go toe-to-toe with Trump, you know, maybe this is a bit of a rocky moment where the fact that she just got to the end of the fight is a win in and of itself. But anyway, having said all that, neither one of these candidates did a good job of answering the questions. If I were to grade both candidates on the policy that they brought to the debate, I would probably give them an F. I would probably give both Kamala and Trump an F. Not even a D, not even a C. I'm not in politics. I'm not a politician. But I honestly think I could have went on that stage and I could have absolutely decimated both of these candidates. I think they did an absolute terrible job of trying to express to the public what they stand for. But maybe that was more to the point. Maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Maybe it really is people who support Trump want to see him get a little crazy. They want to see him get a little buck wild and go nuts. And that's kind of what he did. And maybe they want to see Kamala be a little more reserved and a little more, the whole jokes with the Mamala and the brat, brat Kamala. Maybe that's what they wanted to see. So maybe I'm being too literal and looking for real policy. But if I was a swing voter and I was trying to understand what these two candidates stand for, I didn't learn as much as I would have hoped for. So anyway, with that, you can now go into your job site. You can go into a classroom. You can go into work, and you can talk about these positions, educated. So if you enjoyed this content, please do subscribe, because that's going to help me continue to grow this channel. If you don't like it, don't subscribe. That's perfectly fine. But if you did enjoy it and you want to see me continue to do content like this, please do subscribe. That helps me out greatly, and give it a thumbs up. So with that, we'll keep rolling. We got a couple videos up for you. Click on one of those and let's keep moving, as well as leave a comment below. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like, for me, as well as what you liked out of both these candidates. So thank you.